Not every great story begins with a great event. Sometimes it's born from a gesture repeated day after day until it becomes something impossible to ignore. This was the case with an elderly man from a small town in the United States who every day, at the same time, sat on the same wooden bench at the train station. To those who hurried past, he was just part of the landscape. To those who observed closely, it was impossible not to feel the silent force of his presence. He didn't board. He didn't greet anyone. He simply gazed at the platform with a mixture of hope and fear, holding in his hands an old photograph of a smiling young woman. When someone asked, he would answer in a few words, "She promised she'd come back." And he returned to silence. He didn't ask for understanding or evoke pity. He aroused empathy, curiosity, and a strange inspiration, as if he were the guardian of a promise that time could not erase. What no one imagined is that this routine carried a mystery capable of spanning decades and transforming the lives of everyone who crossed his path. A story about courage, generosity, forgiveness, and the power of kindness, but also about the weight of loneliness and the resilience needed to keep hope alive when all seems lost. Prepare yourself. Knowing this story may change the way you view love and the promises you choose to keep. In the heart of a small town in the United States, there was a train station that over the years became more than a departure or arrival point. It was a stage for silent stories, observed only by those who knew how to see beyond the rush. Among these observers was an elderly man with a serene gaze and an erect posture, who every day, at the same time, walked to the same wooden bench, worn by time, and sat there. The world around him seemed to spin at a different speed, but he remained still, contemplating the platform with the patience of someone who carries within him the courage to wait and the perseverance to not give up. The scene, repeated with almost ritualistic precision, conveyed a mixture of respect and understanding for history itself, something that inspired empathy even in the most distracted. There was, in his presence, a silent power of kindness, as if simply occupying that space were an act of affection and reconciliation with the past. The old man didn't talk much. His routine was so precise that some employees would adjust their watches by the moment they saw him appear at the entrance. He crossed the lobby with slow but steady steps, as if each movement were guided by the wisdom of one who had already understood the value of each minute. On winter days, he was wrapped in a heavy overcoat. In summer, he wore only a worn hat, but in all seasons, he carried the same expression of hope. Those who observed him more closely noticed that, despite his apparent tranquility, there was something in his eyes, a reflection of loneliness, and, at the same time, a spark of unshakable confidence. It was as if time had no power to shake his resilience, and that daily wait was his purest form of altruism and generosity, dedicated to someone only he knew. As the months passed, passengers of all kinds came to recognize him. Some saw him as a living example of perseverance, others as an intriguing enigma worthy of a novel or film. He cared nothing for other people's curiosity. His mission was clear to him, and that was enough for him. With each train arrival, his eyes scanned the platform as if searching for a solution to a mystery only the heart understands. The emotional intelligence with which he dealt with his own fear and insecurity was something rare, as if he had found, in the repetition of his routine, a shelter from the chaos of the world. For him, it wasn't just waiting, it was keeping alive a promise made long ago. A promise that, as would soon be realized, was the key to a story capable of moving all who came near. The more attentive passengers noticed that the elderly man, despite being there every day, never got up to board any train. It was as if the movement of the cars was just part of the scene he observed, with contained anxiety, a mixture of hope and fear. His eyes, always fixed on the platform, seemed to search for someone specific in the crowd, but at the same time, they revealed the loneliness of someone who has witnessed many departures and few arrivals. Some station employees, moved by compassion and curiosity, tried to start conversations, but he responded only with a gentle wave and returned to stare at the exact spot where the train doors opened. The gentleness of his silence carried a weight that few understood, but all respected. The way he observed each arrival was not apathetic. On the contrary, there was a meticulous ritual. As soon as the train whistle echoed in the distance, his shoulders straightened and his face gained a sudden energy, as if he were about to rediscover a part of himself. Passengers disembarked, families hugged, young people rushed to taxis, but he remained motionless, as if waiting for a specific name to be called from the crowd. It was impossible not to feel the emotion of someone witnessing the scene for the first time. Some, touched by this example of perseverance and emotional intelligence, commented among themselves on what could keep that confidence alive, even after so many days, months, perhaps years. Among those who passed through the station daily there were those who felt inspiration in that constant presence. There were also skeptics who saw it all as useless stubbornness, but even they could not ignore the silent strength of that man. He seemed to live an intimate adventure, fought not on battlefields, but in the invisible realm of promises made and broken. His posture conveyed a mixture of humility and courage, qualities that together formed a shield against insecurity and discouragement. And although no one dared ask directly what he was waiting for, it was clear that his lost gaze was, in fact, fixed on something much deeper, the memory of someone who one day promised to return. Whenever the elderly man sat on the station bench, there was something he never left without in his hands, a small old photograph, already yellowed with age, its edges worn and slightly bent. The image showed a smiling young woman, with a sparkle in her eyes that seemed to carry a piece of sunshine. It wasn't just a photo. It was a portable reliquary of affection, an anchor that kept him steady in the face of life's storms. Holding it, he exuded a mixture of hope and gratitude, as if that paper were capable of keeping him connected to a love that had withstood the passing of decades. Some passengers, upon noticing the gesture, felt a twinge of empathy, imagining that this woman must have been, for him, more than a companion, a living promise of reconciliation with his own history. The photo seemed to have accompanied the elderly man through all the seasons of his life, the intense heat of summer, the biting cold of winter, the sudden spring rains, and the dry wind of autumn. Despite its wear, it still preserved the young woman's smile clearly enough to convey tenderness. Watching him hold that image was to perceive the power of kindness in its purest form, the kindness of keeping someone's memory alive, even without knowing if a reunion would ever be possible. Some curious people, driven by understanding and insight, tried to create theories. Was she a wife, a sister, a friend, or perhaps the love of his youth who departed without warning? But he offered no clues, simply tucking the photo into his inside coat pocket whenever the train departed. No matter how many years had passed, that photograph remained the center of his perseverance. It was as if every line on his face was a chapter of that silent weight, every wrinkle marked by the resilience of not giving up. His relationship with that image wasn't one of simple nostalgia, but of constant initiative. Being there every day was his way of keeping the flame of hope alive. For him, it wasn't an empty habit, but a mission of love, generosity, and honesty with his own feelings. And without realizing it, this daily gesture began to attract more attentive attention, planting in the hearts of others a growing curiosity about the story behind that woman with the unforgettable smile. Over time, some braver passengers ventured to strike up a conversation with the elderly man. Always politely, they began with comments about the weather, the punctuality of the trains, or the station's hustle and bustle. However, when the conversation approached the reason for his daily presence, the answer was always the same: she promised she'd come back. He said this with disarming sincerity, accompanied by a brief but melancholy smile. Then he would elegantly change the subject, diverting it to any other topic, as if this were sacred territory, protected by respect and the need to preserve something that for him was still alive. It was clear there was a vast story behind these words, but also an invisible wall built with understanding and wisdom to keep the intimacy intact. His refusal to reveal details didn't seem like arrogance, but rather an act of love and affection. Many realized that this choice stemmed from a rare emotional intelligence, the knowledge that some memories don't need to be exposed to maintain their value. It was as if he carried a fragile jewel in the pocket of his heart, protecting it from the prying hands of the world. This attitude aroused both generosity and frustration in those trying to help. Some young passengers even commented to each other that this weight was a living example of perseverance, humility, and altruism, a silent lesson in how hope, when nurtured daily, can span years and overcome the weight of insecurity and fear. What few realized was that, by not telling his story, the elderly man was also allowing it to become an inspiration for others. Each observer imagined a different plot, and this multiplicity of versions fueled general curiosity. Rather than offering a ready-made solution, he offered a mystery, which in a way, united people through collaboration in the act of speculation. His silence was more powerful than many words, and this ability to maintain control over the narrative was a testament to his insight and intelligence. Yet, to those who knew him by sight, it was clear that this waiting had deep roots, tied to a past that, sooner or later, would find a way to reveal itself. In rare moments of distraction, the elderly man's gaze seemed to wander not on the platform, but within himself, as if reliving scenes from another time. For those paying attention, it was possible to detect a slight tremor in his hands, an almost imperceptible change in his breathing, signs that deep memories were being triggered. And then, like intermittent flashes, the story insinuated itself. Decades ago, the same station had been the scene of encounters filled with affection and joy. There he was, younger, wearing the uniform of a difficult time, firmly holding the hand of a young woman with a sweet smile. The world around him was in turmoil, rumors of war, economic crises, and fears that tested anyone's courage. It was a scenario where love needed to be sustained by resilience and the promise of a tomorrow. The last encounter he held in his memory was vivid and painful at the same time. She, with teary eyes, handed him something small, perhaps a note, perhaps a gift, as a distant whistle announced their departure. There was no time for discussions or detailed plans, only the urgent need to say goodbye. He, in his humility and honesty, promised to wait. She, with the confidence of someone who believes in the impossible, promised to return. And then, as in so many true stories, an event greater than human will separate them. A hasty boarding, doors closing, a train disappearing over the horizon. Life went on, but for him, that promise hung in the air like an unfinished solution waiting for the right moment to materialize. What followed were years of silence and scarce news. Time moved on, bringing innovations, new generations, and changes to the city, but his routine remained anchored in that station. It was there that he felt closest to her, even without knowing if she was alive or where she might be. The perseverance with which he maintained this habit was a blend of emotional intelligence, generosity, and a rare kind of courage, the ability to face loneliness without letting it consume him. For many, it was a story of loss. For him, it was a story of ongoing resilience, a chapter that had not yet come to an end. And as would soon be discovered, there was more to this promise than anyone could have imagined. Among the few objects the elderly man carried with him every day, there was one item he never parted with, a small note, folded and carefully kept in the inside pocket of his coat. The paper, already yellowed and fragile, seemed almost ready to fall apart at the slightest touch. but he treated it with the same reverence a collector gives a relic. On it, handwritten in faded ink, were just 3 words: "Wait for me." Simple, direct, yet charged with an emotional weight only he could measure. This message, so brief, contained an entire universe of affection, hope, gratitude, and courage. It was, for him, a silent pact, a daily reminder that perseverance and resilience are virtues that cannot be abandoned, even in the face of insecurity and fear. Some passengers, upon seeing the elderly man remove the note and look at it for few moments, were overcome with an almost childlike curiosity. What lay behind those words? Who had written them? Why did he cling so tightly to them? But he, with the humility and emotional intelligence that characterized him, never offered explanations. With each silent reading, his eyes took on a gleam that blended understanding and a strange sense of reconciliation, as if the mere existence of that paper were enough to keep him going. It was the kind of detail that transformed his story into an inspiration, not only for those who believed in promises, but also for those who understood that some journeys are sustained more by commitment than by results. In that small rectangle of paper, years of condensed humanity fit. It was as if his own life were written there, intertwined with the generosity of hope and the honesty of not giving up, even without guarantees. The note was not just an object, but a symbol of the human capacity to transform words into engines of action, to keep the flame of love alive even when everything around insists on extinguishing it. And so, day after day, he put it back in his pocket, adjusted his hat, and faced the platform again with the same confidence as ever. The world around him might change, but that promise, short and powerful, remained the center of his existence. Time passed before him like a book of endless pages, each chapter marked by a different season. In winter, the elderly man bundled up, in a heavy overcoat and a woolen scarf, braving the biting cold that froze even his breath. In summer, he exchanged his heavy clothing for a light shirt and a wide-brimmed hat, shielding himself from the sun that gilded the platform. In spring, he smelled the scent of the flowers that adorned the station grounds, while dry autumn leaves swirled around him in the melancholy months. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could pull him from his routine. The perseverance he demonstrated was the fruit of courage, resilience, and a rare kind of discipline, as if each day he renewed the silent vow not to abandon that promise. Station employees, already accustomed to his presence, began to treat him with a mixture of respect and affection. Some brought him hot coffee on freezing days, others bottles of water on the most humid days. These gestures of kindness were reciprocated with a shy but sincere smile, filled with gratitude. The scene inspired even the youngest to reflect on the meaning of commitment and emotional intelligence, as he was unfazed by temporary discomforts. His attitude taught that when something is important enough, humanity finds solutions to obstacles, be they physical, climatic, or emotional. The changing seasons were not, for him, simple climatic phenomena. They were milestones, reminders that time waits for nothing, but faith, when accompanied by understanding and hope, can span years as if they were days. Rain, wind, heat, or snow, he was always there, with the same fixed gaze and photograph in hand. With each dawn, he renewed his resolve to stay, even when insecurity and loneliness tried to whisper that it was useless. In his mind, persevering wasn't just a choice, it was an act of love and generosity toward his own story. And as some curious onlookers would soon realize, this constancy was what kept alive the mystery that was beginning to gain momentum in the station's corridors. As the years passed, the elderly man became almost a living legend at the station. Young passengers, driven by curiosity and a desire to understand the enigma, began exchanging information with one another. Some took discreet photos, others asked the staff questions, trying to discover who the woman in the photograph was. The more daring even considered starting their own investigation. His persistence, fueled by resilience and courage, aroused a mixture of respect and fascination. It was as if everyone sensed that, behind that silent weight, lay a story of love and reconciliation, capable of deeply touching even the most skeptical heart. Rumors began to circulate. Some said she had been his wife and had disappeared without a trace. Others swore it was a forbidden romance cut short by tragic circumstances. Some imagined she had been the victim of an accident, while others believed she might be alive somewhere, also waiting for him. This web of speculation heightened the commotion around the bench where the elderly man sat every day. People saw him as a symbol of perseverance and honesty, a man who, despite insecurities and fears, stood firm for something he believed was greater than himself. With each new face that stopped to observe him, the story gained more layers. He had unwittingly become a source of inspiration and involuntary collaboration among strangers who joined forces to uncover the truth. His patience and the way he kept the photograph and note intact were a living example of emotional intelligence and humanity. But no matter how much people speculated, only he knew the depth of the promise he kept every day. And as it was about to reveal itself, the mystery surrounding his life was not just a figment of collective imagination, but a real plot marked by events no one at the station could have foreseen. The truth began to emerge unexpectedly. A young passenger, a journalism student driven by a mixture of curiosity and insight, decided to investigate further. Scouring old archives of the local newspaper and public records, he found a story long forgotten. The woman in the photograph had disappeared under mysterious circumstances more than 40 years ago. Authorities at the time were unable to determine whether it was a kidnapping, an accident, or a voluntary escape. The case was closed, but its impact remained vivid in the hearts of those who knew her. As he shared this discovery with other passengers, the station was filled with emotion, and many began to see the elderly man not just as a hopeless romantic, but as someone carrying the weight of a real, unsolved mystery. For some, this revelation further strengthened their respect for his perseverance. The courage to wait for decades, even in the face of uncertainty and a lack of answers, was something few would possess. Others, however, began to wonder if that wait wasn't also a form of emotional imprisonment, an attachment that prevented the elderly man from experiencing new stories. But he, with his humility and emotional intelligence, seemed oblivious to these external analyses. He continued to occupy the same bench, with the same photograph and the same ticket, as if each train arrival were a new opportunity for reconciliation. The power of kindness that emanated from his presence was no longer just in the promise he kept, but in the inspiration he offered to those who passed by. The young journalist, now more involved in the story, tried to speak directly to the elderly man about the disappearance. He received only a deep look, filled with affection and a silent confidence that needed no words. "She promised she would return," he repeated, before turning his eyes back to the platform. In that moment, it became clear that, for him, the truth of the facts was less important than the promise itself. The wait wasn't just for one person, but for the fulfillment of a pact that, for him, defined the meaning of life. What no one knew was that the final chapter of this story was already underway, and it would bring a solution as unexpected as it was transformative. That morning, the station felt different, as if the air carried an invisible weight. The employees, accustomed to seeing him arrive at the same time, found his absence strange. The wooden bench, which for so many years had been occupied by his silent figure, remained empty, illuminated by the sun streaming through the window. Some more attentive passengers exchanged glances, feeling a strange mixture of insecurity and sadness. The routine was broken, and with it, the feeling that something important was about to happen. It was then that, near the information desk, Someone found a manila envelope without a return address, addressed only to the station administration. The envelope, upon opening, revealed a carefully handwritten letter. The first lines made the reader's heart race. It was a farewell. He thanked the employees, the passengers, and everyone who, in some way, had shown him kindness and generosity over the years. At the end of the letter, attached with a rusty paper clip, was the same photograph of the smiling young woman. On the back, words previously unknown to everyone. If you're reading this, it's because my wait is over. Her train has arrived. A sense of emotion gripped those who witnessed the moment. It was impossible not to feel that phrase carried not only love and hope, but also reconciliation and forgiveness for all that time could not explain. Beside the letter was also a small, folded note, different from the old one. On it, in feminine handwriting, was written, "Thank you for not giving up." That simple message, filled with affection and humanity, was enough to seal a story that had defied decades, seasons, and doubts. No one knew for sure how or when that woman had returned, or if she was still alive when the note arrived. The mystery remained, but for all who followed her journey, the solution lay in the very essence of the gesture: persevering for something you believe in, even without guarantees. And so, the legend of the old man waiting at the station lived on in everyone's hearts, as a reminder that love and the power of kindness have the power to change the meaning of an entire life. What if you had the courage to hope for what you believe in, even when everyone says it's impossible? How many promises have you left behind out of fear, insecurity, or a rush to move on? This story of the old man at the station reminds us that empathy, love, and perseverance aren't just pretty words, they are actions that shape destinies. The question is, are you willing to keep your own promise alive, even if the whole world doubts it? Look at your life right now. Is there someone who deserves your forgiveness? A dream that's been forgotten in the back of a drawer? Or perhaps a reconciliation you've been putting off for years? The generosity and emotional intelligence he demonstrated could be the keys to transforming your reality, whether in relationships, at work, or in the way you see yourself. Don't let this story be just a momentary inspiration. Use it as fuel to act. Take the initiative to make the call you've been avoiding, resume the project you abandoned, or offer the solution that only you can provide. And to continue receiving stories that inspire courage and hope, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. After all, the next step to changing your life may be as close as the next station.